What's going on, Supreme Team? You're here with J-Dog Supreme, and today we're going to be running through all the Elden Ring classes, ranked from easiest to hardest. Elden Ring is considered one of the most accessible games from FromSoftware yet, but there are some classes that offer an easier starting experience compared to others. First off, we have the Vagabond Class, or the Knight that players would know from previous games. Vagabond is a martial class, and is the most basic class for newcomers to jump into. If you're looking for a class that will make things as easy as possible while also familiar, Vagabond is for you. This class begins at level 9 with the Longsword, Halberd, a heater shield that blocks 100% physical damage, and the Vagabond armor set. Vagabonds have some of the best initial defense and offensive stats in the game, starting off with a vigor of 15, the highest among all starter classes, giving it more health and making it a tanky build able to withstand more damage. This class also has a good balance of strength and dexterity, making them hit harder with big weapons, but also able to wield dexterity based weapons. The Vagabond doesn't start with a bow, but can utilise one once they get their hands on it. One thing to keep in mind is that they will all have a very slow dodge roll throughout the majority of the game, until their stats are built up in a way to overcome their high equipment weight. Another thing to keep in mind is that the Knight isn't magic focused and will have limited magic options. Although, if players want, they can put points into Faith and Mind to at least give them access to basic healing eventually later in the game. Despite the magical limitations, the Vagabond can scale well into a variety of builds. This is a simple class that is the most recommended for new players that are okay with little magical involvement. Next up we have the Confessor. The Confessor is also a martial build, but has a good amount of faith to back it up. If you are looking for a paladin style class, then most people will find it in the Confessor. Confessors begin at level 10 with a broadsword, a blue heater shield that also blocks 100% physical damage, and a finger seal. Confessor also begins the game with 2 incantations, Urgent Heal and Assassin's Approach, offering players to use a stealth approach if they desire, and additional means of healing right from the get-go. The Confessor can be built in a variety of different builds and is highly versatile, having a good stat spread. Confessors are well equipped to begin with, and are in the best position to utilise some of the most powerful faith-based spells relatively early in the game. Confessors can be considered a jack of all trades, master of none kind of class, that is capable of a variety of builds, but is not a true master of any style. Veterans that may be looking for a very specific stat build will need to keep this in mind. The Confessor is another excellent choice for beginners, offering a very versatile and capable class. At number 3, we have the Samurai. Samurai is a bit of a new class in Souls games, but has risen in popularity due to games like Ghost of Tsushima and FromSoftware's other title, Sekiro. Samurais are another martial class, but swap strength and vigor in for a higher dexterity rating of 15. Samurai start at level 9 and have starting equipment of a Uchi Katana, a longbow with arrows and fire arrows, a red thorn round shield, and the Land of Reeds armor set. Samurais offer new players a range option straight out of the gate, to keep distance and thin out mobs before closing that distance. Once that distance closes in, the Samurai is still able to hold its own in melee combat. Samurais will feel like they are able to handle most situations the Elden Ring throws at them, the range option helping players ease into the combat. Samurais also begin the game with a powerful ability called Unsheath. Learning to use this ability will help players decimate their foes with ease. Keep in mind that Samurai is also not generally magic focused, so players will have to keep this in mind when starting with this class. Overall, the Samurai's ability to adapt to various situations with its ranged and melee choices make this a very good choice for newcomers. Next up, we have the Astrologer, or the Mage class. This is the best starting class if newcomers want to go with a magic build. They start at level 6 and begin with a short sword, a staff, a wooden shield, and the Astrologer armor set. You begin with 2 spells, Glintstone Pebble and Glintstone Arc. Astrologer offers a very good setup for a mage and can be upgraded quickly due to its good staff and access to a variety of spells thanks to its high intelligence. For very new players, however, that are not used to how a magic class functions, this class may take some getting used to, which is why this class is ranked higher on this list. Astrologers will need to keep their distance if they want to do well in combat, but once class basics are learned and more powerful spells are obtained, this class can bring down enemies and even bosses with its wide variety of spells. Magic is very powerful in Elden Ring, and this class is the best entry point for people wanting to deal in magic. Just keep in mind a slightly higher learning curve compared to the previous classes. These 4 initial classes are what I think are the easiest entry points for newcomers to the series. These next 6 classes start to climb in terms of difficulty as they start to get more specific and require more knowledge on how to best utilise them. At number 5, we have the Prisoner. This is considered a spousal class and is a class for people who want to have access to sorcery magic while also being able to hold their own in melee combat. Prisoners start at level 9 and have starting equipment of an Estoc, a Glintstone Staff, and a Glint Shield, along with its own Prisoner unique armor. Prisoners also start with 1 spell, Magic Glintblade. Prisoners can hold their own in melee combat, provided they utilise spells effectively as well as keep their distance when needed so as not to get overwhelmed. Using the Prisoner best requires using both sorcery and melee combat, which may make it a little hard for newcomers. As such, this class will shine brightest in more experienced players. Prisoner is a fun and rewarding class once players have learned to effectively combine both strategies. One thing to keep in mind, the Prisoner begins with quite a low faith stat, which also makes it hard to learn powerful incantations. Prisoner showcases a good mix of melee and sorcery and is a rewarding class when played right. It just requires a player that has the knowledge to do so. Next up, we have the Hero. The Hero is the Brute, or the Barbarian class, with a high starting strength of 16, and definitely packs a punch. The Hero begins at level 7, and has a starting equipment of a Battle Axe, largely the Shield, and the Champion armor set. Heroes with their strength of 16, and the Battle Axe are more of a hit first, ask questions later type class. Heroes are melee focused brutes that deal a ton of damage and only that, which is why they are placed higher on this list. Heroes are a limited class in a lot of ways outside of straight melee damage, as they will have no access to spells or range options unless leveling these skills are done. Despite being limited, it will not take much for players to figure out what this class does. Heroes are a good choice if strong melee combat is your focus, but just bear in mind their limitations to some of the other playstyles that Elden Ring offers. Next up at number 7, we have the Prophet, which is another magic focused class, but instead of sorceries, this class focuses on incantations. Prophets start at level 7 and begin with the equipment of a short spear, a finger seal, and a rickety shield, along with its own Prophet armor set. Prophet also begins the game with 2 incantations, Heal and Catch Flame. Prophet begins with a very high face stat of 16, making this class have early access to some of the most powerful spells in Elden Ring. Despite this high faith stat, the Prophet can be tricky for newcomers as they have little room for error due to their low defense and health. As such, we will need a player that knows how to best utilize them, along with the spell Catch Flame that can potentially drain a player's FP quickly. Prophet is not recommended for newcomers due to their low defense and specific playstyle, and can be daunting, requiring players to approach battles cautiously, especially in the early game. However, sticking with the Prophet will see players get good access to powerful spells early on, and be able to keep that progression going, paying off into the mid to late game. At number 8, we have the Warrior, the only class that dual wields straight out of the gate, that is able to deal heavy damage. Warriors begin at level 8 and begin with 2 scimitars, a wooden shield, along with the Warrior armor set. Warriors have a high dexterity starting stat, allowing them to have access to a variety of weapons and to utilise dual wielding effectively. The reason they are higher on this list is the way they are expected to play to best utilise their stats. Warriors are more suited to an aggressive playstyle in order to best utilise their dual wielding, sacrificing a good defense with no shield. Players will need to learn to utilise their stamina effectively by rolling and dodging out of harm's way while also keeping up the offensive. Warriors, however, can be leveled fairly easy in other stats to help gain access to magical abilities to assist in this aggressive playstyle. Overall, this type of aggressive play can be daunting for new players and compared to other classes will take a bit more getting used to. As such, this class is better suited to more experienced players and veterans alike. Next up, we have the second most difficult class, the Bandit, the stealth option, or assassin. Bandits begin at level 5 and have a starting equipment of a great knife, a short bow and bone arrows, a buckler, and the Bandit armor set. Bandits are primarily Elden Ring's stealth class, which means players will need to adapt to a quiet approach instead of running in sword first to get the expected results of this class. As this is a very unique playstyle, this class is not intended for newcomers and is more suited towards experienced players. Bandits have the highest arcane base stat out of any class, which means they are more likely to find better loot, although in saying that, players will also need to know how to best use this loot. Due to the open world nature of Elden Ring, the Bandit class is much more viable compared to the other Soulsborne games. A big thing to keep in mind is that players will have a steep learning curve when it comes to early bosses, as the tried and true sneak approach will not be able to be used effectively against them. Overall, the Bandit class is a deadly class when used effectively in the right situation, but the unique playstyle that demands of the player is why it is rated as one of the most difficult. Lastly, with the most difficult class, we have the Wretch, otherwise known as the Deprived from the Dark Souls series. Wretch starts at level 1 and begins the game with nothing but a club. All stats also begin at 10. It should go without saying that this class is definitely not for newcomers. This class is intended for players who want an even bigger challenge in the early stages of the game. Despite all this though, the Wretch cannot be written off as a useless class. In fact, a lot of Souls veterans may prefer to begin with this class. This is because they start at level 1 and effectively are a blank slate that can be moulded into however a player sees fit. They definitely have no starting strengths, but their even stats allow for the Wretch to be grown in various ways. Overall, the Wretch is best left alone for newcomers and is reserved for experienced players who know what they are wanting out of their class and can see the potential that this offers. That's my ranked list of the Elden Ring classes from easiest to hardest, although keep in mind that the classes are more of a template and determine starting stats and equipment only. Don't feel as if you're locked into that class, as they can be adjusted to suit your specific needs. What are your thoughts on this list? What classes are you going for? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, let me know if there's any specific Elden Ring content you'd like to see, and subscribe for more Elden Ring content. You've been watching Jadok Supreme.